Speaking of someone who never, ever misspeaks, ladies and gentlemen, the fortunate son himself, Cokie McCokerson. This week shows why woke never works is the title of this one. You're watching House Sparks Mega Worldwide. God help us.
Okay, guys, it's been a disastrous week for
oh my God, it's so bad, guys.
The Biden administration.
It's so terrible. I mean, guys.
And it wasn't just a garage gate. You had the...
I think they just have a door on it. I think the property has a gate.
FAA grounding all...
Oh my God, not the FAA grounding that lasted 4 hours, guys, because the software hadn't been updated in years, and all during the Trump administration, you don't say.
Flights because the Department of Transportation didn't think to update like an almost 75-year-old system. But you know what they did?
It's a 75-year-old system. 4 of those 5 years were with your fucking dad as president. Just throwing that out there.
Have time for? This is the stuff I mentioned earlier.
Oh my guys, you can't make this up, guys. I was so excited.
Earlier in the week that I said I would going into.
Remember that thing I was telling you about? I'm going to go into it. What was the thing I was interested in again? What was I talking about?
They had time to make sure that racial equity, inclusion, income inequality, environmental justice, and climate change.
And climate change? Is it just me? Seriously, I didn't think this fucker could get any more nasal. It turns out that 2 FAA contractors fucked up the software. Well, hello. It's interesting that we're getting to the bottom of it. And then what do? Solve it, move on. And then if there's another problem, because life is life, solve that one. That's fascinating. I have to look that up.
We're part of the DOT and FAA's focus.
The fuck does that have to do with anything? Okay, guys, I don't know if you know this, but the Weather Channel, as part of their like woke agenda, has changed. They've got like an Asian lady doing the weather in some areas, and they've got like a Hispanic lady doing it in Spanish and stuff, and that did nothing to stop the hurricanes, guys.
In the 2023 budget. So if you're surprised that the FAA...
Hold on. Oh, okay. That stuff was in the 2023 budget. Let's see. Let's look at it. FAA budget 2023. I'm sure he's got a copy of it in front of him. FAA budget 3% rise overall. I mean, it's yeah, it's just wokety woke, wokeness, woke, security and hazardous materials. That's woke. Next gen, woke. Staff offices, Office of Integration and Engagement on woke. Justification program activity, grants and aid for airports, personnel and related expenses. Wokety woke. Airport terminal program, other information, relief for airports, aviation user fees, airport airways trust fund, wokety woke, just everywhere. Look at it. It's just terrible. Creation of administration, guys. Creation of assistant administrator for research and development. Why does if they've got an administrator, why can't they assist themselves? Guys, creation of assistant administrator for assistant manager for integration and engagement. Oh my God, I forgot. They made another job. What, guys? Chief technology officer. What they hired a new chief technology officer. And look, came right in and fucked everything up. They haven't actually hired the person yet, but that's okay. Capital investments, background highlights, imported factors affecting plan for the future, key considerations in capital planning, next gen, NAS modernization, sustaining systems. Yeah, it's just all, look at this. Probably for equity and inclusion. Barf, barf. Guys, this year, the FAA's budget, all it said was more black gay women in charge of stuff they know nothing about. Hey, guys. So you can't make this up.
FAA systems went down this week, grounding all domestic flights. You shouldn't be, because it's clear where their priorities are.
Hold on. I have to look at FAA 2 contractors, you said? Says, computer failure that grounded thousands of flights. This is Fortune. FAA says computer failure that grounded 1,000 flights was caused by 2 contractors who introduced data errors in NOTAM system. Probably black guys, gay, black, trans, poor, uneducated, affirmative action hires guys who were put in charge of planes and all right. The computer failure that prompted a halt of all U.S. flight departures was caused when a data file was damaged as a result of a failure to follow government procedures. Oh, hey, it was a problem we'd already fixed and somebody didn't follow instructions. The Federal Aviation Administration said Thursday. Unspecified personnel were responsible for corrupting the file, which led to the outage of an FAA computer system that sends safety notices to pilots. The agency said in a statement that triggered the FAA to order a halt to all U.S. departing flights, causing thousands of delays and cancellations on Wednesday. The system is functioning properly and cancellations today were below 1%, the agency said. The preliminary indications are that 2 people working for a contractor introduced errors into the core data used on the system known as the Notice to Air Missions, or NOTAM. According to a person familiar with the FAA review, the person asked not to be identified, speaking on a sensitive ongoing issue. NOTAMs are advisories. By the way, when I'm taking flight lessons, that you check NOTAMs to get when you're prepping for your flight and all that stuff. And in the middle, you can get updates. Depending on the length of the flight or how long you're up. Like other computer systems that are critical operating flights, the FAA has imposed procedures to ensure data aren't damaged by technicians working on them, said the person. The file or files were altered in spite of rules that prohibited those kind of changes on a live system. Agency officials are attempting to determine whether the 2 people made the changes accidentally or intentionally, and if there was any malicious intent. When the system began having problems Tuesday night, technicians switched to a backup, but because the backup was attempting to access the same damaged data, it also didn't work, the person said. A complete shutdown was required to restore the system, leading the FAA to halt all flight departures for roughly 90 minutes Wednesday morning. It was, Airplane-ageddon. The agency is attempting to create new protections to prevent such a failure in the future, the person said. Portions of the NOTAM system are as old as 30 years, not 75, as Junior says. By the way, they're in the process of recognizing that there was an Easter egg problem that still existed, and now they're going to fix it. And they're going to update the rest of the system because Pete knows what the fuck he's doing.
Remember, guys, there are no underserved communities when no one is served. That was a line I read on Twitter. And
yes, that you heard that right. Don Jr. is stealing jokes off of Twitter.
They're 100% right. That's
who? Name them. You stole their jokes. Say who they are. You fucking hack.
Washington think. Okay.
Okay.
You know what else they focused on?
Gay planes. No, not gay planes. Not that. Planes that take extra wide seats for fat people and their emotional service pets. No. Fuck, that's not it, Hal. Get it together. What could it be? They were busy painting rainbows on all the planes for Pride, which is now year-round. All right.
The NOTAM system. As a pilot, I know a little bit about it, but...
All right, tell us about it. As a pilot, I know a little bit about it. Well, yeah, knock it out, motherfucker.
The Notice to Airmen. That's the acronym.
He's up on it. He really is, and it's good, because he's a pilot. He doesn't have to read it like he's reading it. Look at the panic. I'm just reading something, and then there's like, oh my god, I have to read face.
NOTAM.
Yes, we know how NOTAM is spelled.
Stands for. So, in recent times, the FAA changed that. December of 2021 to Notice to Air Missions. Not Notice to Airmen, not something that's been around for a while that every pilot knows about. So,
by the way, zero fucking material change. Notice to Air Missions, because not all pilots are men. Who gives a fuck? Who cares? He thinks that this was the piece of data that they introduced. Somebody wrote in that, like, there's a chick pilot on this fucking plane. What the fuck?
To offend. We have to make it air missions because airmen implies just men, and apparently...
Right. And it isn't just men. Missions works better. And it's a notice. And by the way, they changed it to missions because it used to be men, and they could just keep the M and transfer over. It was just easier to keep saying. Who gives a shit? You don't even say, like, I've got my, notice to air missions data. You say NOTAM. Who gives a shit?
Not women. This is what they're focused on.
Look at Jesus Christ. Can you imagine being this scared to lose your place on a book report? It's weird, isn't it? This always strikes me. Like, sometimes you'll have his notes up and he's like, what was I going to say? But this is getting worse.
So this is their priority.
Changing one word in a manual. You do realize we live in a digital age, and that happens like this. That's it. That was the end of it. And then they could go right back to dealing with a problem that existed all during your dad's presidency, and nothing was done about it?
Pro tip. 0 women in aviation were likely offended by NOTAM, okay? It's an acronym.
Okay.
No one cares.
Yeah, it's still the same. It is still the same one. The interesting thing is, were women offended by NOTAM, meaning men? Probably not. The fucked up thing is that he's definitely offended. He's offended by men being changed to missions in this. Holy shit.
It's
All right.
It's hard to believe, okay?
Yes, it is. It's hard to believe that you think that the changing of one word in the description of a system that does not affect the vernacular with which pilots discuss it was the reason that 2 FAA subcontractors entered some code and fucked up the basics. Jesus.
But again, remember, folks, we can't update these systems. We can ground domestic flights, but you know what we can't do? We can't.
He meant to say, you know what we can do? We can, and then he fucked himself into a corner.
We can't fix that because we're so busy sending $130 billion to the Ukraine, okay?
First of all, again, the FAA budget went up. Where is it? The FAA budget, 2023 FAA budget requests $18.6 billion, represents an increase of 3.3% from the fiscal year 2022 continuing resolution level. Sorry, did we scoop money out of the FAA to replace one word and help Ukraine? Get the fuck out of here.
That's what's going on. These people.
That's totally what's going on, guys. The planes aren't there. Guys. The planes aren't there. They sent them to Ukraine. They're using them to ship our money out of Ukraine and send it to Wilmington, Delaware.
I don't know what the fuck.
People aren't serious.
And you are?
I point these things out and they say, Pete Buttigieg is credibly qualified because he has a bunch of academic degrees. I go, well, what does that have to do? Is he a pilot?
Was Elaine Chao?
Does he understand anything about the FAA? Does he
Yes.
understand anything about transportation? Because
No, he's never been in a car. Actually, he's too small. He has to wear. He's diminutive, so he has to sit in a child seat. So he's never actually sat in the front seat of a car. So he doesn't even know what the pedals do. Maybe you could tell him. Maybe you know what you should do is get some construction paper and a crayon.
I know is that he's overseen disasters from a supply chain crisis.
Not of his causing, that they solved pretty quickly.
Okay, then he was.
Okay, he was there. I blame him for the Suez Canal snafu during my dad's presidency.
Conveniently on paternity leave for, because only 350 million Americans depended on him. Like, God forbid, maybe you show up anyway.
Also, the idea of primacy solution, which is what this family runs on, is that there is a singular idea man, or that the directives or that the person below him can't arguably understand the solution matrix of what's being worked on in any particular area of government is mind-blowing to these fuckheads because they don't actually produce anything. The Trump organization is a labeling endeavor ever since his grandfather died.
To remember the borderline train strike and the disaster that went on.
the borderline train strike that didn't happen and got worked out, and the trains went on time. And you remember the thing? Remember the disaster that didn't happen? That's his fault too.
With that for weeks during a
because you had to hear it on the news. That's why it's a disaster, because something might have happened and then it didn't happen and then it might have happened again and then it didn't happen. And that's rough on him. You know what I mean? When you've got that many grains in your nostrils, you're gonna get some fucking paranoid thoughts from almost any news story.
a supply chain crisis. Now
Did he mention the supply chain crisis though?
the FAA, and that's what happens when you get qualified candidates and they're overlooked because you put in some
Like, he's doing this. He's jumping past his answer. So it's like, yeah, you can't do this, but what you can do, and he fucked that up by saying what you can't do and had to double back on what he was saying. And this is when he went straight to, he brain farted that Pete Buttigieg is qualified. And then he went, but these people don't get the job because they're going to give it to some gay dude because he's got babies.
someone with academic credentials that checks off a bunch of woke boxes because...
Right, because he's gay. Why did your father put Elaine Chao in charge? What were her qualifications, beside the fact that her family owns a shipping business that was linked to cocaine trafficking and her husband is Mitch McConnell?
Because he happens to be gay and no one cares.
Right, no one cares. It's not why I got the job.
Okay? That's the problem. That's
what it is. They put a gay guy in charge. They start inviting women in, and the whole thing goes to shit.
This is extraordinary. I don't know how this ends with young Don here. I can't see it ending well. Can I get a Ben Carson exactly? His credentials. Yeah. I mean, I guess it's I wouldn't call it a vocation. I guess is coke a hobby?
the problem, folks. And that's where we are, and that's why it continues. Have a good one.
That's where we are, and that's what we're doing, and that's how it's done, and that's what happens. And there's just going to be, you just get ready for more gay dudes crashing our entire thing. It's just, you can't even get in a plane anymore without it being all gay and stuff. I blame the Virgin planes. They're guys, they're woke lights. Holy shit.
It's a job to his sinuses. No kidding. Holy God. Yeah, the texture of his voice is changing a lot over time, and not in a good way. I know a lot of people are like worried about my cough, and bless your heart. Thank you. I'm fine. I'm okay. And it only really bothers me. The interesting thing is when I'm talking for long periods of time, which if you'll notice, my hardest days of coughing are Monday, Wednesday, and Friday when I have 2 shows a day. That's when I'm midway through a show and I'm like, but Tuesday and Thursday I barely cough at all, and that's because it's just getting over something.